You know that person who laughs at jokes 2 seconds before everyone else gets them? Or the one who sits quietly in a room full of loud opinions and says nothing, and then says one thing that completely dismantles everything? Yeah, that person carries something most people never get to understand from the inside. And today, we're going to talk about what's really going on inside the minds of highly intelligent people, the parts they never show you, the parts they can't explain, and the parts that make their lives both extraordinary and quietly exhausting. Because here's the thing most people get wrong. Being highly intelligent isn't a superpower the way movies sell it. It's not always genius, confidence, and the right answer in every room. Sometimes it's overthinking yourself into paralysis at 3 a.m. over a decision that should have taken 10 seconds. Sometimes it's laughing at something no one else finds funny, and then spending the next hour wondering if something's wrong with you. Sometimes it's carrying the weight of seeing things, really seeing them, and wishing, just for a moment, you couldn't. So if you've ever felt like your brain is both your greatest asset and your most exhausting roommate, welcome. You're about to feel very understood. Let's start with something that sounds like a compliment, but often doesn't feel like one. Highly intelligent people are almost always aware of how much they don't know. There's a famous psychological phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with low knowledge tend to massively overestimate their competence. The less you know, the more confident you feel. The more you know, the more you realize how vast everything is. Highly intelligent people live on the other side of that curve. They look at a subject they've spent years studying and still feel like beginners, because they can clearly see the edges of their own knowledge. And that gap between what they know and what there is to know can quietly become a source of anxiety. Most people walk through life with the comfortable confidence of someone who doesn't know what they're missing. Highly intelligent people don't get that luxury. They see the gaps. They count them. And sometimes, they become obsessed with filling them. Now let's talk about something that surprises people. Highly intelligent people are often deeply, profoundly lonely. Not because they're antisocial, not because they're arrogant, but because genuine connection requires someone operating on a similar frequency, and that frequency is rare. Studies show that highly intelligent individuals actually report lower satisfaction with social interactions as they become more frequent. Most people draw energy from socializing. Highly intelligent people can too, but only in the right environment, with the right conversation, the right level of depth. Put them in a room full of small talk, and something inside them quietly dims. They'll show up. They'll say the right things. They'll laugh at the right moments. But they'll go home feeling more alone than when they left. Because there's a difference between being surrounded by people and actually being seen by them. And for highly intelligent people, being truly seen is one of the rarest experiences of their lives. Here's something else. Highly intelligent people tend to question everything, and I mean everything. Rules, norms, systems, beliefs they were handed as children. Not out of rebellion, out of necessity. Their brain literally cannot accept "that's just the way it is" as a complete answer. It keeps pulling at the thread until it finds either the logic underneath or the uncomfortable truth that there isn't any. This trait makes them dangerous in arguments, not because they're mean, but because they've already seen your argument from every angle and pre-demolished it in their head before you've finished your sentence. But it also makes them exhausting to live inside of. Because when you question everything, nothing feels certain. Decisions become complicated. Relationships become layered. Even happiness becomes something to analyze rather than just feel. Philosopher Albert Camus once wrote about the absurd, the tension between humans, need for meaning, and the universe's silence on the matter. Highly intelligent people often live in that tension, not as a philosophical exercise, but as their daily emotional reality. Let's talk about something nobody warns you about: the curse of pattern recognition. Highly intelligent people see patterns everywhere. In data, in human behavior, in situations that are still developing. They can look at the beginning of a conversation and already see where it's going to end. They can look at a relationship and sense its trajectory long before it plays out. And in some ways, this is remarkable. It makes them good strategists, good problem solvers, good at reading people. But there's a shadow side. When you can always see where things are going, it's very hard to be surprised. And surprise, genuine, joyful, unguarded surprise, is one of the purest forms of being alive. There's research suggesting that highly intelligent individuals experience less spontaneous joy than average, not because they feel less, but because their brains are always slightly ahead of the moment, processing, predicting, preparing. They're so busy watching the movie that they forget to actually watch the movie. And if they've seen this pattern before, in themselves, in others, they can find it almost impossible to be fully present, because part of their mind is always already in the next scene. Now here's the part that might actually hit you somewhere specific. Highly intelligent people often struggle with their emotions more, not less. There's this assumption that intelligence and emotional control go hand in hand. That smart people have figured out how to manage what they feel. That's a myth. Research actually shows that higher cognitive ability is linked to something called emotional intensity, where feelings aren't just present, they're amplified. When a highly intelligent person loves something, they love it with a depth that surprises even themselves. When they grieve in layers, first the loss itself, then the philosophical weight of what the loss means, then the meta-awareness that they're grieving, and then the analysis of whether they're grieving correctly. It's not that they can't control their emotions. It's that their emotions come with footnotes. Every feeling has sub-feelings. Every reaction has a reason, and often the reason has its own reason. And when you're someone who can see inside their own emotional machinery with that kind of clarity, it doesn't always make the machine easier to run. One of the most underrated struggles of highly intelligent people is what psychologists call existential depression. This is different from clinical depression, though sometimes they overlap. Existential depression is when someone becomes deeply, painfully aware of the gap between what the world is and what it could be. They see systems that are broken and know exactly how to fix them, and realize no one is listening. They understand the scale of suffering in the world, and they feel it, personally, as if they are somehow responsible for solving it. They wonder why we build things that fall apart, why we repeat history, why we choose comfort over truth. And carrying all of that, while also trying to buy groceries and answer emails and function in the same ordinary world, is genuinely heavy. Dr. James Webb, who studied gifted individuals for decades, described this as one of the most common and least recognized challenges of high intelligence. The world wasn't designed to accommodate people who feel its weight this acutely. But let's not stop there, because this story isn't just about struggle. Because here's what's also true. Highly intelligent people experience beauty with a depth that is almost incomprehensible to describe. A piece of music doesn't just sound good to them. It lands somewhere internal, structural, like it rearranges something. A book doesn't just tell them a story. It becomes a lens through which they see everything else differently afterward. A moment of genuine human connection doesn't just feel nice. It becomes something they carry with them for years, like a small light in a pocket they keep reaching for. The same sensitivity that makes the world sometimes overwhelming also makes it sometimes overwhelming in the other direction, breathtakingly, achingly beautiful. And that is not nothing. That is actually everything. There's also something I want to say about the relationship between high intelligence and self-doubt, because this one catches people off guard. You'd think that being highly intelligent would come with a deep, settled confidence. But studies consistently show that highly intelligent people are actually more prone to imposter syndrome than their less analytically gifted peers, because they can see, with perfect clarity, all the ways they could be wrong. They can see the gaps in their reasoning, the exceptions to their conclusions, the scenarios where their confident take falls apart. And so before presenting anything, an idea, a plan, even an opinion in conversation, they run it through an internal filter of every possible counterargument. Sometimes they come out the other side, still confident. And sometimes they dismantle their own position so thoroughly that they end up saying nothing at all. The quiet ones in the room are often the ones whose internal dialogue is already held, a full debate on the topic, and hasn't reached a verdict yet. Here's something worth sitting with. Highly intelligent people often feel like they're performing their way through social life. Not because they're dishonest, but because they've learned, often through painful early experiences, that their authentic way of engaging with the world is too much, too fast, too weird for most spaces. So they develop a social version of themselves, a dimmer version, one that laughs at the right moments, holds back the most interesting thoughts, asks the simpler question instead of the real one. And after years of doing this, some of them lose track of which version is the real one. That's not a small thing. That's a kind of identity erosion that runs very deep. If you've ever walked away from a conversation wishing you'd said what you actually meant, welcome to one of the defining experiences of being too smart for the room you're in. They tend to form fewer, deeper relationships, not because they can't connect, but because they won't settle for shallow ones. They're often drawn to people who challenge them, surprise them, make them feel slightly off balance in the best way. They need intellectual respect the same way other people need warmth. It's not optional, it's structural. And when they find that person, the one who keeps up, who pushes back, who isn't threatened by their mind, they hold on with everything they have, because they know how rare it is. They've known it their whole life, so here's what I want to leave you with. If you recognize yourself in any of this, in the loneliness, the intensity, the self-doubt, the pattern recognition, the way beauty hits you harder than it seems to hit others, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not the only one. Your brain works differently, not better, not worse, but differently. And that difference comes with both gifts and costs, like everything worth having. The overthinking, the loneliness, the late nights where your brain won't stop running through scenarios, those aren't bugs in the system. They're the other side of the coin that lets you see connections others miss, feel things others skim past, and understand the world at a depth that is genuinely rare. It's a heavy coin sometimes, but it's yours. And the most intelligent thing you can do with it isn't to wish you were different. It's to find the people who understand what it costs to carry it and walk with them. Tell me in the comments, which part of this felt the most uncomfortably true? And if you want to go deeper into why intelligent people sleep differently, love differently, and process failure in a way that almost no one talks about, click the next video. You already know you're going to watch it,